Heard the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak live in Downing Street. You're listening to Times Radio Drive. Here with me in the studio, Ian Martin, Tim Montgomery, and our political editor, Kate McCann, in number 10 Downing Street, on what is now, well, a very, very big day indeed. Do stay with us. We will give you all the analysis of what we've been hearing and where we are going, because now we are into a general election campaign. Kate McCann, well, I mean, I know sometimes, Kate, I want to get to the substance of this. That was Rishi Sunak, as he was setting out his greatest hits of his short period in office, which he moved from reminiscence to sort of campaign slogans. And we're sometimes accused, Kate, of subsuming, the substance of politics to the cosmetics and the theatre. But it's difficult to ignore what we just saw in the sense of the rain tipping down on Rishi Sunak's head and on his suit, getting drenched in the process. And there was a boombox in the background playing Labour's anthem, "Things Can Only Get Better," while he was speaking. It was not, and this is the understatement, it was not ideal, Kate, was it?
No, I think, John, it's fair to say that things couldn't have got much worse for the Prime Minister. It looked like the rain was breaking. It then turned up the volume as soon as the Prime Minister walked out. He ended up looking, well, completely drenched to the skin, it's fair to say. And you can probably still hear the music over behind me. It is, as you say, Labour's campaign track, "Things Can Only Get Better." The rain here is, in fact, getting harder. But look, beyond the optics, which of course don't look good for the Prime Minister, the reality is all through that speech, I was getting texts from Tories saying, "Well, that's it. I'm doomed now. I thought I had more time. I now don't. My campaigners are not ready. They're frustrated. I thought I had more time in Parliament to sort things out. I don't. That's very difficult for me to bear." One former cabinet minister just saying, "This is absolutely diabolical. He looks like a fool." I think some big questions about why the Prime Minister chose to do this speech the way that he has today. But John, in terms of that substance, I have to say, when the Prime Minister first started speaking, I thought, and I don't know whether you thought this too, it sounded as if the Prime Minister was making a resignation speech. He was talking about how, "I'll never leave the people of this country to face their darkest days alone. I did everything within my power to provide the best protection in the pandemic." It was a bit of a kind of greatest hits roundup, if you like, of the things that Rishi Sunak has done before. He then, of course, moved on to talking about the reasons why he believes the timing is right, including the improving economic situation. And he says the fact that he is tackling immigration. But John, a really important point to make on that one, we haven't seen any of those Rwanda flights leave yet, and we are still around 5 to 6 weeks away from even Downing Street's sort of best guess in terms of when those could leave. So I think there will still be some pretty big questions from Tory MPs after that speech, and a very interesting tone, I thought. It didn't feel like a Prime Minister who was launching a jubilant, excited election campaign. It sounded like a man who knows he's got a huge amount to prove and a pretty big hill to climb.
Kate, I have to say that private message to you from a cabinet minister saying the Prime Minister, and this was the quote, I think, "looks like a fool," is the last thing any Prime Minister, any Downing Street team would ever want to hear discussed at a moment like this, as the Prime Minister announces what now will be general election day on July the 4th, a summer snap election. We're going to talk in a moment to Paul Scully, the Conservative MP and former minister. But Tim, watching that with us, along with Ian Martin here in the studio, I've got to say you were not impressed.
It was a brilliant summary by Kate. Look, I've been a critic of the Prime Minister, but I'm fundamentally a Conservative. I want the Conservatives to minimise the defeat at this election. I was hoping that they knew what they were doing today, but that image of the Prime Minister getting drenched, not even having the sort of sure-footedness to make a joke about it, showing a little bit of sort of humour and humanity, self-deprecation about what obviously is going to dominate the front pages of the newspapers tomorrow. Those pictures of not just a slightly damp, but a completely sodden suit that he was wearing. Why didn't they built that press conference inside number 10, beautiful press conference, which would have avoided Labour's theme tune being played in the background. Things can only get better. And I see already over Twitter, things can only get wetter, is what everyone's saying. That will be on a few newspaper front pages tomorrow. Well, this is not the launch that the Tories wanted. And Kate's obviously hearing from a cabinet minister. My sources are more lowly than Kate's, but Tory MPs are still furious. I'm getting messages one after another. They weren't expecting this. They don't think the timing's right. And I think the story over the next few days might partly be significantly about Tory MPs' noises of complaining about the Prime Minister. I hope that's not the case. We all sort of, well, the Conservative Party all needs to get on board now. But there are going to be quite a lot of sort of, it's not going to be the united launch that Rishi Sunak would have hoped for.
That was absolutely shocking. I mean, you have seen a lot in politics, John. I've been around, and Tim has, for a lot of general elections. I've never seen anything quite like that, even in the depths of Theresa May. What on earth do they think they're doing? I mean, firstly, there are the optics. As you said, Johnny, the rain was pouring. For someone not to say, look, this is Rishi Sunak, who, I mean, he came to prominence being good at communications. That was the point, that people thought he was a bit too slick with all the Instagram stuff. What has gone wrong with the sort of confidence of his team? It's just basic judgment to say, you can't be sure that the rain's going to stay off for 4 or 5 minutes, stay inside. That's the first point. Then there's the presentation of it. I mean, I said before we went, when we were talking a few minutes ago, John, that he looked, that he'd been sounding recently down or depressed. I said, I hope the guy's okay. He has had a tough time as Prime Minister, but that was not a campaign speech. There was zero confidence in it at all. And then the substance. Who wrote that? I mean, if
committee. It felt like it was a committee. It didn't have a sort of a thread running through it.
If you're launching a general election campaign, you should. I mean, it should be punchy, upbeat, confident, and it should have within it phrases which are sort of properly delineated, which are going to be the key campaign phrases. Imagine Margaret Thatcher doing it, or David Cameron, or Tony Blair, or just about any of his predecessors. Well, but as I say, I'm pretty unshockable when it comes to politics, but that was a shocking performance.
And those were pretty damning reviews. If this was a first night set of reviews for a new production on the West End, it would be closing tomorrow. I don't want to focus. I want to make a very positive effort here not to focus too much or for too long, because we've heard the view and we saw what we saw, we discussed what we've seen. I don't want to focus too much on the theatrics and the appearances of what we've heard, because it's the beginning now of a process that will decide the direction of our country for years into the future. And I think it's pretty clear it's not going to be an easy trek for the Prime Minister or his government or his party, but this is the beginning and not the end. I want to get the view, our first view from, as it were, the shop floor, and say welcome to the programme, 2 Times Radio Drive, to Paul Scully, the former Conservative Minister and now backbench MP. Welcome to you, Paul.
Yeah, I think I might be an ex-MP. Yeah, I don't know, actually, because I'm not standing in the next election. So, good afternoon to you, John.
It's good to have you here, Paul. So, look, with no prompting from me, what did you make of that?
I was slightly frustrated this afternoon with all the female speculation, and I sort of agree with what Tim says, because, I've been doing this now for 27 years or something like that. I joined the party in 97, so I've seen the election at that time, and it just feels like we're going around full circle. And it doesn't take a headline writer to talk about the fact wet Tory speaks from a lectern. And we've got to now articulate a vision, because I think what we're doing now is that with this announcement is talking about we're not sure what's happening in the 6 months that's coming, so let's cut and run now. And what people want is certainty. They want the economy to carry on growing. They want those flights to go to Rwanda. But actually, we need to have the confidence as a party to say we have those answers. I'm not hearing it yet. So I want to get my successor in supplementary. I want to get as many MPs to make sure that we're shaping the party in the months and the years to come. But we've got to do more about setting out our vision over the next few weeks.
Paul, is it going to be possible for MPs, ex-MPs, campaigners, party workers, those on the doorsteps in these coming weeks, to pull together and put on a united front? It's not a happy set of circumstances to announce a general election. We discussed that. But during a campaign, it's imperative that a party holds together, does not undermine its leader, puts on the best show possible. Is that going to be possible, do you think?
Yes, but it works both ways, because actually, you've got to lead from the front. So the leader has to show that power, and the cabinet has to do that as well, and all the people in their own particular areas. And then you get the volunteers and the activists to come out and actually, share the vision. But you need that vision in the first place. So actually, we've got to work together, and we've only got now a few weeks to do this. But this isn't necessarily, I've reasonably good at maths, I can add up, is not necessarily about us leading the country for the next 5 years, but it's for us being a credible opposition at the very least, a credible party that is a repository for people that still believe in centre-right values of opportunity, freedom, and aspiration.